So what is Sage X3? So Sage X3 is the flagship solution in the Sage portfolio. It's a native web-based application really meant for organizations that are growing, that need faster, more intuitive, tailored business management solutions. The solutions are multi is what we say. So multinational, multi-currency, multi-jurisdiction. And Sage X3 offers a support with verticals in food and beverage manufacturing, industrial manufacturing, and distribution. Now, just because those are the core areas that Sage focuses on, it doesn't mean that Sage X3 can't be used in other areas, because they have a very robust job cost solution with the job and project management. They also have very strong financials with dimensional accounting, intercompany, and consolidations out of the box. So Sage X3 by the numbers here. So as far as where Sage X3 is, it's a worldwide solution with over 625,000 users, end users worldwide that work for over 5,500 customers. It's sold into over 80 countries, and we have over 1,300 certified consultants supporting those Sage X3 customers. We talked a little bit about the vertical industries. Sage actually has 18 industries that Sage X3 is focused on. Now, the other thing that we mentioned was multi-language is a key solution or a key part of Sage X3. We go back for a moment, thank you. With over 15 language packs. So if you have operations in Quebec, if you have operations in Italy, around the world, there's a language pack for you that your users in those regions don't need to know English. They can work in their native language and everything flows through properly. So the typical customer profile, talked a little bit about this or mentioned it already. Product-centric industries, typically with discrete or process manufacturing and distribution. Typically, they have complex business requirements. So whether it be multi-company, multi-entity, consolidations, a national or global expansion initiative, or a fast-growing company that just needs more access to their data, remote access, and multi-site operations. With those type of organizations, corporations are fast-growing, and their needs continue to change. Now, whether it be through acquisitions, adding new locations, making sure that you're in compliance with the local legislation. Also, companies who use technology for strategic or competitive advantages. And then when it comes to analytics, inline dashboards right in the screen, and then Sage Enterprise Intelligence is bundled with every X3 solution. So you get the power of Sage Enterprise Intelligence on top of the native reporting found within Sage X3. So we talked a little bit about product-centric businesses. I'm not going to read through all of this, but what you'll see here is manufacturing and distribution. I mentioned a little bit about project management. Even though that's not one of the core areas that Sage X3 focuses on, the project job management solution is very strong and robust that does advanced billing and revenue recognition. Also with contract management and asset management built in, and then of course the finance and global compliance. So some of the key features, in the financial data model, here we go again with the multi. So multi-company, multi-site, currency legislation, multi-ledgers, dimensional accounting. All of these solutions or all of these features enable an organization to change, to grow. The solution can grow with the company, and they can get the data as they need it. You can slice and dice it so different users can consume the data in different ways, all the time maintaining compliance with local legislation, regardless of where you're at. Whether you're in Canada, the US, UK, the rest of Europe, China, wherever you may be operating, Sage X3 is built to manage and handle those legislative issues. Denise, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Oh, I think this is, as you would have guessed, you will hear the word multi many times today. I mean, we may become redundant, but I think it's definitely an important concept or an important key features, I guess, within Sage X3. you'll see through the presentations when we're talking about sites, when we're talking about the ledgers or the currencies or perhaps the companies. I'll touch base over. I've got a slide or the screen to show you a bit later in this presentation, but I think that's the key to me to really understand of how you can, like, the architecture of the X3 and how you can leverage it for your various operations.
Fantastic. So I think now it's time to dive into the product. Let's take a tour of a Sage X3.
Super, thank you, Jeff. So let me flip over to this. The first session today is covering the I guess the key features of X3. So what we wanted to do is, instead of diving into specific modules or functions within X3, I want to kind of give you a little bit of insights and overview of how to log in, how the look and feel of the navigational within X3. So we'll talk a little bit about some different features, but really to kind of give you a good sense of how easy it is to navigate throughout the solution. And we'll touch base on the various modules. Again, without getting in too deep on each of the modules, but at least you can appreciate what the different modules that are available within the solution. And then after this sessions, I'll focus more on the distribution, followed by the manufacturing on the third sessions, if you're actually signed up for those sessions as well. So the first one here is let me log into the X3. First of all, X3 is web-based. Okay, so there's no, in this case, I'm using a virtual machine on my local laptop here, but this server could be anywhere in the world, providing I have access to the infrastructure. I do not need to install anything local on my computer. So all I need is a browser, whether it's Edge, whether it's a Chrome, whether it's IE, whether it's Firefox. I mean, all of those browsers are supported. So all I need is a web address and proper credentials, and then I'm in IAM. Okay, so that's important to understand is it is web-based. It's not an on-prem solution that's actually that you can deploy on a remote desktop server, for instance. This is truly a web-based, so there's no local footprint, if you will, or local installs of X3 on my machine, let's say, in this instance. I'll log in as mod X3 mainly because from a user perspective, you can actually set up certain preferences. So I have the sessions today focusing on certain sites and certain companies. So I'll log in as mod X3. When I log in as mod X3, again, based on how you would who you would be when you log in, you would only see what you're allowed to see based on your roles and based on menus and based on functionalities or function attached to those roles. So totally flexible. This mod X3 right now, think about this as I'm logging in as the administrator, so I pretty much have access to everything. But when I logged in, I saw this landing page, which I created for Bass Connect Remote just for this session today. If Jeff was going to log in with his credential, Jeff would see his own login page as well. Okay. X3 being web-based, it's also responsive. So if I'm logging at this through perhaps an iPad or a tablet or even an iPhone or an Android device, again, any browser supported, then the software would basically be responsive as well. So as from a screen perspective, so I could log in. I don't need to log in via a full desktop. As I logged in, it remembered what was my as mod X3 remembered what was my landing page. So my home pages that you see at the bottom here. So the main one is the Bass Remote Connect. I can have multiple landing pages, okay, if I want to. So in this case, I have one for finance, for manufacturing, for PJM. So I can basically create multiple ones, again, by user. When we install Sage X3, it comes pre-configured with about 35 or 36 pre-configured roles. So those roles are what you see on the top left here. So if for instance, if I click on Warehouse Manager, then the Warehouse Manager, there's some predefined landing page with some either some KPIs or some queries or some business process flows. Okay, if I log in, if I'm perhaps the I don't know, let's say the planning managers, well, planning manager is going to see anything related to MRP, for instance. If I'm the controller, then I would expect to see anything more around the finance and costing. Okay, those visual process flows, are totally customizable. You can create your own, and there's actually over 150 processes that are again pre-configured. I mean, the templates are there for you to modify and then basically totally customize as per your needs. So where those comes in handy is if you're looking at onboarding new resources. I mean, that can be a great way to, if you have a predefined workflow. So instead of having to navigate, and I'll show you a bit later on the alternate methods of navigating through this, but instead of doing the kind of the menu or the long way of finding things, you can very nicely create some process flows for each of your process within the company, or it could be role based as well. So you could have one, if I'm a controller, like I could have a section for perhaps like month end, or a section for a daily task type of deal. Okay. If I look at if I look from my landing page, just to show you how easy it is to add or to leverage some of the processes that are in there. So let's say I'm maybe I'm the sales manager, and I actually want to see, when I log in, I want to basically have a dashboard or a list of open sales orders. So if I look at my landing page here to the top, almost in the middle of the screen, I have the plus sign. So if I hit the plus sign, I have the ability to add queries, processes, statistics, representations, calendars, web links. Okay, so I can design, so these are different types of widgets or gadgets that I can add to my main landing pages. So I'm going to select queries in this case, and within the queries, when you build those on the back end, you're able to then associate a module to them. So in this case, I know that sales orders, I would assume that sales orders is within the sales modules. And within the sales modules, I'll just pick a category called orders. And then if I look at my, I don't know, if I look at open sales orders, for instance. So these, just to be clear, these are all the list of queries that were predefined, that are pre-built. Okay. Now, I did not modify or create any of these for the demo. When we actually installed the X3, all of those were bundled in. So this is a standard out of the box that you get when we activate Sage X3. So if I click on the open sales orders and I click on OK, now what I have access to is, let me delete this, maybe I didn't follow the process here. So let me look at queries, I look at sales, I look at orders and open sales orders. Here you go. So now I have a list of open sales orders. Okay. Now again, we talked about there you go. Here's my first multi plug again within the presentation. So because this is multi-company, multi-customers, multi-sites, you're going to notice that this list may contain, I mean, it contains what, 42 pages of orders, and those would be, because this is a demo environment, I have a lot of I have what 10 or 12 or 15 companies in here, many sites, but I could go in my queries and actually limit it to see only the ones for perhaps my applicable. Maybe I'm in North America, or maybe it's for my Canadian operation. So I could go and pre-filter that query so I only see the ones that are applicable to my territory, for instance, or my company. Okay, so very quickly we're able to go in and add this, and again, this is by user. Okay. So calendars, for instance, I mean, if you're looking at if you're into warehousing or into manufacturing, you want to see what's actually due by date, then you would basically add a calendar representation style, and then you would have a calendar style representation for your landing page. Okay, so very easy to navigate. This is typically the preferred way or the recommended way for users to navigate through the system. Makes it much easier. If you look at the process manufacturing process, right, you would start perhaps at a quote, or dealing with a prospect, maybe putting in a quote, transferring that quote into a sales order, putting it in sales forecast, running MRP. I mean, you get the idea. So basically these flow would follow the natural evolution, I guess, of each of the process. And then if you look at here at the bottom left, where, again, when we're talking manufacturing, I mean, what about bill of materials, products, product sites? I'll be navigating mostly through the screens throughout the presentations today. But again, those are totally customizable. So if you want to add some, modify some, change the link, and the idea is when you customize them, you would just add the text box and then link the actual Sage X3 functions to it. So most of these are, you don't need to be a programmer to build them. Well, all of these, you don't need to be a programmer to build these. You need time. I mean, they can be time consuming just to go in and then add the text and the functions, but they're pretty straightforward to create or modify. So that's the preferred way of navigating. Alternate ways of navigating as well is on the top right of the screen. There's a compass right next to my Finder. If I click on the compass, this is the kind of the menu style way of navigating. So these are all, you can see all the modules, how this is structured. You typically have the like kind of a development area. You have an admin area, and then a setup and common data. So most of the configuration, like master records and configurations, are done within setup and common. So within common, you have all the modules, and then down below, you know, if you need to do the transactional, so purchasing, sales, stocks, so all of these would be your transactional data. So your actual like sales orders and shipping and invoicing. Okay, so again, this is, you may see me navigating through this a little bit today. The main reason why we usually as implementers navigate through this is that there's some of these setup screens perhaps that it's kind of a one-off, set it and forget it. So we don't necessarily take the time to have visual process flows to access those menus. But once the setup is complete, clients usually typically navigate through X3 within those process flows. And in here, for instance, you have the search bar. So if you, within the search, if I'm looking to look at a, let's say a product. So if I look at products, I mean, you can actually, products might be a bad one because I've got 61 hit. But if I click on next, it'll basically get me through the different menu items for the products. And then I could go, once I actually see, in this case, I know it's actually within common data, it's actually in products. If I click on it, now I open up the actual product screens, okay? An alternate way of doing this is, I don't know if you've noticed, but let me just exit this for a sec. So when I went into the product, you notice, I don't know if you noticed the star next to it on the right of it. So the star means that this was actually added as myself, as ModX3 that I logged in. I've actually added this as my favorite. I mean, I'm into production or product planning. So this is a menu that I use all the time. So I can basically star this or I can unstar this. So if you actually notice on the very top of the screen, there's that ribbon for my favorites. So if I actually unstar this, I don't see the product anymore. If I actually added that star, now I have it. So that way, instead of going the long way of trying to figure out where to navigate within this long menu, I can just click on my products on top, and there it is. There's my product. Okay. The ribbon itself, I can access my favorites through the drop-down arrow right next to my star, and I can see my list of favorites as well. And just from a real estate perspective, I mean, you'll find that one thing you'll notice in X3, there's a lot of fields. Okay, so there's a lot of fields, a lot of functionalities. With flexibilities comes perhaps complexity, or maybe like a lot of fields to accommodate those. So a lot of times you're going to want to, for instance, like hide, and I'll come back to this, but you can hide your left panel, for instance. You may want to clean up this and say, you know what, I'm going to hide this, my favorite bar, just to give you more space to work with on your main screen. Okay, so that's an alternative way as well. So most of us within organizations, I mean, I would say we probably use 80% of the time, we probably use 5, 10, 12, maybe 15 screens or process max. So again, those could be set up as favorites. So that's, you've got a quick way to access them. There's my second mentions, multi-language. So I'm logged in right now as ModX3. My language is English. If I want to change on the fly, and if I want to change to, let's say, to French, and I click on this, and I'm going to say yes, and right online, or right now everything is basically in French. Okay, so this is a true multi-language. So when I add a text, there's in the language translation tables on the back end, there's ways to input the equivalent, if you will, or translations for all the different language. So everything's right now is in French, and again, providing that I have the languages available with this. And now if I go back to my language, and I'll bring it back to English US. But as you can tell, I mean, there's about 15 or 18 language packs available. Okay, it's as easy as that. So you don't need to, you can set the users to be default language, but users themselves can go in and basically change the language on the fly. The other thing as well is, let's say that I'm actually looking into products right now, but you know, I have the product available, and maybe at the same time I actually want to analyze something else. I mean, maybe it's I want to park this, and all of a sudden I got to receive a call from a customer, and I need to check something for the customer. So maybe I don't want to exit this or close this. So what I can do is on the Sage logo on the top left, if I right click on it and go open link in a new tab, I can have multiple tab open. So I'm only consuming, X3 comes in from a licensing perspective. X3 comes in with concurrent users, not named users. So at this stage, providing that I've opened a tab and used the same web browser, I'm only consuming one license right now for X3. Okay, and you can have unlimited number of tabs open. So right now, if I wanted to go into my favorites and I said I gotta receive a call from a customer, now I basically have customer open on this one, and then I have my product open on the second one. Okay. To close a screen, I can just click on the right arrow, kind of the exit door, and now I'm out of that one, and then I can basically just close that screen, and then I'm back here. If I want to go back to my home screen, if I just simply left click on the Sage logo, now I'm back on my landing page. So very quickly you can go back to your home screens. Earlier on, I mentioned about panels. So let's use the product screen to highlight this. So I'm going to click on products. So what we're looking at here is a screen for product for stock. Okay, you basically have three sections on most of the screen. So you would have what we consider, or what we name the left panel, and that left panel would be used for filtering or selecting. So in this case, this is my list of products available. And again, because of the architecture of Sage X3, this is again multi, so multi-company, multi-sites. Products would be common to all companies. So in this case, I believe I mentioned between 10 and 12 companies, or 10 and 15 companies set up in this environment, that those products would be common to the list. Okay. And and again, I could be looking at suppliers, I could be looking at customers, I could be looking at accounts. Same thing applies for all of those master records. So this left list, I can, through the configuration screens, I can change which fields or columns, right, or which fields are available for me to select, to filter. In this case, I've got product description, the category, the product, or the product status, UPC code, key search, or search key. Okay, but if I wanted to add or remove something, we have the ability through the admin, through the configuration screens, to modify what displays here. If I wanted to perhaps add the category as the first one, I can just drag it, drop it here. Again, these changes are specific by users. Again, mod X3 in this case. So if Jeff was going to log in right now, we would not see category as the first unless he logged in with my credentials. If you want to filter, so for instance, if you're looking at description, contains, again, I'm using product as an example. This could be accounts, this could be suppliers, customers, all of those master records, all the fields are searchable. And if I look at, maybe I'm looking for sprocket, right? And then I can do a start with, I can do a contains, ends with, less than, equals, greater than, you name it. So if I look at contains sprock, then it would show me all the products that includes Sprock in its description, and I can search for any of the I can have those search for any of the columns available. I can clear the filter. The other thing is as well is pretty much on all of these, whether it's their master records or even transactionals, where I think about like purchase orders, sales orders, any inquiries you would have done. If you click on the last read, that'll actually show you the last records read. And you're going to notice today we're actually going to be talking about jalapenos. So we'll be distributing, manufacturing jalapeno dip, bean dip. So as I was reviewing the screens to prep for this session, you'll see that the jalapeno bean dips with the ingredients, those were the last read records. Okay, so you have, and again, you have this. I mean, I'm looking at a master record, but if you think about this as if you had like sales order entry or purchase orders, you can nicely see the last record read. You can hide this the left panel. You can basically resize it if you wanted to, or if you actually click on the arrow here on the left here, pointing arrow, now my left list is out. Before I talk about actually let's talk about it. So the central panel is where I would either have my my fields for my transactions, or in this case, for my master record being products. The screen contains multiple blocks as per Sage X3 terminology, or I guess are multiple sections. Okay, and if I do this, let me just go here, click on the ellipses here. I'm going to pin my functions here on the right hand side, and let me just make this bigger a little bit. So what I want to point out, and again, being responsive, this should actually change to, like, instead of seeing all the sections from jumping from one section to the next, there's a little bit of maybe there's a bit of a delay with the VM. So if I can actually jump to each of the sections, if I go to identification, I mean, there's some fields, and we'll go through this on the next session, but you can jump to the actual preset block, if you will. Okay, so that's your main, and again, you were looking at a master record here, but if we'd be looking at the transactions, this would be where you would, input the fields for sales orders or purchase orders or manufacturing orders, if you can think of that. So that's the center panel. That's where most of the actions happen. And then on the right hand side is your function panel. So that function panel, as you just saw, you're able to pin or unpin it, and depending on what screen you're into, you'll have your different functions available. Okay, so if I actually unpin this, now again, I get more real estate. I mean, if you actually hide the left panel, hide the right function panel, now you have a much more real estate to work with your whatever functions that you're doing in X3. Okay, so the ellipses, throughout the software, everywhere that you have ellipses, you have access to actions or functions. Sometimes you're able to drill down. So for instance, if I look at the product categories, I could look at this here. I mean, in this case, the ellipses can bring me to the properties and advanced selection, but some of the fields as well have those right pointing arrows, and they're jump tools. So I'm able to drill down or to access or open up the category, product category, in this case, functions, make any changes that I want to, and then just exit. And now I'm back at the previous screens that I basically jumped into the category from. Okay, and then to the right of this, I mean, if you want to add a new record, the plus throughout the software, again, we're looking at products, but if you want to add new purchase orders, sales orders, customers, accounts, click on the new. There's a save button, so if I make any changes here, let's say W, right, and as soon as I made a change, and the system recognizes that something changed, so now I can do the save. If I want to cancel my change, I click on the X, and now I've just canceled the change. Or if I wanted to delete a record, I won't delete it, but if I wanted to delete a record, just click on the garbage bin. The refresh is there if you actually want to let's say that you create a new record and you want that record to appear on the left panel, then you click the refresh, and then the left panel would populate. That item would then appear on this. You can print. You can do attachments, so notations throughout the software, whether you want to attach a document or note to a master record or transactions, you can do that. There's comments as well, and then you can export. There's an Excel add-ins that you can install to export. There's an export functions from the screen, and there's also an export menu with the templates that you can export with different file format. And from the architecture, if you look at X3, every transactions within X3, so whether it's a stock movement, whether it's a journal entry, whether it's a sales, whether it's a purchase invoice, every transaction line would be tied to a site. And then a site by nature, when you actually set up a site, you tie a site to a company. Okay, so and think about a site as, let's say that we take BAS Business Solution. Maybe there's a site in Moncton, maybe there's a site in Kelowna, but those two sites are part of the same company. So you're able to have multiple sites. Sites can be manufacturing sites, sites can be financial sites, sites could be distribution, right? So a site, again, is a mean to perhaps track cost and that, right? Grouping costs together. And then you can, even if you had like multiple sites, perhaps there's means as well to group sites together. So for instance, there's a site in Moncton, there's a site in Halifax, there's a site in Charlottetown, and then we're gonna have a group called the Maritimes, right? And then maybe there's one in Thornhill, there's one in Hamilton, and there's a site group for Ontario, okay? But all of those sites are perhaps part of the BAS, again, BAS Business Solutions company, okay? And if you look at BAS actually adds as a sister company. BAS has Lanetco, BAS as CSAS, an accounting firm. Okay, so but all together we are looking at common owners. So within X3, again, you would set up the list of sites tied to each of the companies, and then those companies can then be grouped for a reporting purpose, and then all of these are basically held within a single database. So we're talking here like common customers, common suppliers, common items, common accounts, okay? So we can leverage the Sage X3 architecture that way. And then from an intercompany standpoint, so if I, today in the next presentation, I'll show you how we have any 24, which is the operation site, and then any 21, which is the manufacturing sites. So sales will generate the demand, and then there'll be some inner sites, not intercompany, but inner sites in here transfers. But if the site was actually from another company, there's means to automate the intercompany transactions. So what it does is it balances every entries within X3 are balanced by sites. And if you're affecting two companies, it'll be balanced by companies as well. So when you sell, company A sells to company B, or in this case, a sales from company NE10 to NE20, there's all of the backend, the intercompany interco entries, and we can do auto elimination entries from a consolidation standpoint. That can all happen. That can all be set up. So again, totally flexible from that side. But the idea is, the concept is that every transaction is not tied to a company, but tied to a site, which by default is tied to a company. And then there's ways to group transactions or group costing either by sites or by group of companies, and then you can do consolidation at different levels. The other multi as well, as we talked about multi, Jeff mentioned about the multi ledgers. So you can have, every company can have up to 10 ledgers. So for instance, if you're operating in, let's say in Canada and US, or perhaps you're operating in Canada, US, and let's say Caribbean, maybe you want to need to maintain transactions in different currencies. So yeah, you would have the ability, for instance, to have a Canadian, let's say, ledger in Canada. Perhaps you would set up a US ledger as well, or maybe you leave it as a Canadian ledger in Canada. And on the state side, you could create a US and a Canadian ledger, and when you consolidate, everything that you post within the US ledger could be automatically translated to the Canadian ledger, and then you use both Canadian ledgers for consolidation. Okay, so you can have up to 10, and then ledgers can be financials or legal, or ledgers can be analytical as well. Okay, so when we're talking about like a traditional accounting solution, when you're looking at a chart of accounts, you would typically have a, let's say you have multiple companies, multiple sites, and then you would have an account, right? A lot of accounting systems, and I know like Sage 300 is built this way, where you would have a segments or different segments within your chart of accounts. So you would like each of the permutation, if you will, or each of the combination would basically represent a physical account in your chart of accounts, which can then, you know, be pages and pages. Like if I was gonna translate the chart of accounts for all the companies and the sites from this virtual machine in X3 into SH300, you'd be talking like hundreds of thousands of accounts. In X3, instead of having the segments, we would have the natural account itself. Okay, so if it's, for instance, if let's say we have sales, well, sales of what, right? Sales of, I don't know, let's look at seafood, right? Sales of fresh, sales of frozen, sales of snow crab, sales of lobster. Well, technically in X3, what you would do is have one account, like a single account called revenue or sales, and then you would use dimensions to identify the sales of what. Okay, so within Sage X3, you would have your again sales account, and then within the sales account, you can have up to I'm going to say 10 or 12 dimensions, 10 dimensions at the per account. So you could go like, let's say fresh or frozen would be one dimensions, and then we could have a sub dimensions, if you will, or a second dimension that would say, okay, what's their species? So whether it's, you know, lobster or snow crab or whatever, right? And I'm using seafood, could be anything. Okay, so that reduces the chart of accounts. X3 comes with a standard chart of accounts, which we highly recommend clients of using, because there's some predefined posting journals in the system that reduces the implementation time drastically. And then we then make use of dimensions, you know, to be more specific based on the organization or the vertical or the industry, if you will. Okay, so that's a big concept too, that you know, again, that allows the streamlining, that allows for a shorter chart of accounts, that allows total flexibility and power from a reporting perspective. So when I'm reporting on sales, if you think about this, I mean, again, if you have 10 companies and you want to analyze the revenue by across the companies, I mean, you could then look at, okay, well, give me my sales account, and then basically leave the companies wide open. And then if you want to look at perhaps their fresh sales amongst all companies, then, well, let's do fresh to fresh or frozen to frozen, right? So you could basically, and then those dimensions, the way it would be set up is you would then tie, if we keep with the examples of the fresh and frozen, or maybe by territory as well, right? Maybe you want your revenue by Maritimes, Ontario, BC, or you name it, then that could be a dimension as well. So the territory dimension could perhaps be, well, would be assigned to the customer. So at the customer level, you would say, okay, customer ABC is from Ontario, so I'm going to assign you a default dimensions of Ontario for that customer. So when you sell something to that customer, automatically that dimension of Ontario gets pushed to the GL. And then, so that's the where, and then the what, the fresh or frozen, and then the actual species would be tied to the actual product. So those transactions or those values would then be automatically pushed to the sales transactions or purchase transactions to the P&L. Okay, so that's a critical concept from an X3 perspective. So we've looked at the how to navigate. We've looked at the architecture. Just to give you a sense of functionality, I know Jeff mentioned earlier on about the different modules. So of course the financials, I mean, you would get the financials, I mean, from a GLEREP, if you will, but Sage X3 does come in with I'm going to say a light CRM solution. I mean, light to, you know, an entry level, and because X3 is a development platform, I mean, if there's any process or fields that you need to add, well, then you just add them. I mean, that's just X3. So you're able to go and make or build your own screens or add fields or add fields within the tables and fields on screens. That's all doable within X3, and most of this without being a programmer. So there's like X3 is built for that too, so you can actually leverage the flexibility or this development platform and concept. So within the CRM, as far as tracking leads, tracking interactions with those leads, setting up calls, tracking what we're done on the calls, and then promoting that prospect into a customer, and then doing quotes, and then following, setting up opportunities, setting up maintain or tracking those sales opportunities through projects perhaps. I mean, those are all things you can do. And then the after sales service as well, not just the pre-sales, but once you've actually engaged, things like service contracts, service request, service response. So you can build the after sales service, you can build the knowledge base even of kind of break and fix. If you're into I'm going to switch gear perhaps from seafood to equipment. If you're an HVAC company, or you're maybe a loader or heavy equipment a company distributor, so you're selling your parts, and then it comes with some warranties. So you're able to track warranties on this, and then track equipment at those sites. And then as request comes in, you're able to build a knowledge base of those break and fix, if you will, based on models. Okay, so that's on the CRM side. I just want to touch base on the concept of business partners. I know we've like from a CRM perspective, I know someone can be like a prospect or a contact, but there's a concept of business partner in X3, and a business partner is anybody that you interact with. So a business partner in X3 is can be a prospect, can be a customers, could be a sales rep, because your sales rep has interaction, could be a carrier. So carriers, there's carrier management. Business partner could be a customer, a customer and a supplier, of course. And when we're dealing with customers and suppliers, if you're purchasing material and selling material to the same organization, you would have a single business partner, and that business partner would then be set up, would have an extension as a customer and an extension as a supplier. So you're actually able to apply a receivables against the payables, or a payables against the receivables. Okay, so that's important as well. So it's a common record, but you're able to offset or to apply AR against AP and AP against AR. So that's on the CRM side. We have 3 minutes left, so I'll just wrapping up here. But from the other modules, purchasing, procurement, we'll look at this a little bit actually in the next sessions. So we have full purchasing capabilities with X3 comes with the ability to create workflows and approval workflows. Sales modules. So again, I've mentioned already about the ability to enter quotes, convert them into sales orders. From a sales perspective, we'll mention that we'll see that in the next session, but the concept of allocations, if you're into food or any type of distribution, the concept of being able to allocate either by detail or global orders, or reserve specific stock or quantities for customers is a key concept. You have that in X3. The whole stock modules, product sites, we'll spend most of the next session actually on this one. There's a project module, so project and job management. So if you want to, even from a manufacturing perspective, you could leverage the projects, or from a not so much constructions, but more project-based that you want to track. I don't know, maybe it's you've got the special projects, R&D projects that you want to track expenses. You have the ability to put in estimates, put in work breakdown schedules, and then track cost and status of those tasks when it through the projects. ARAP I mentioned already. It has the fixed assets. We have the fixed assets modules. So again, built right in. So you're able to capitalize expenses from X3, and then you have and again, being multi-legislation, multi-company, so you have the ability to in here, depending on the legislation pack that you purchase, it would come with the appropriate or the default amortization method per country, but you can also build your own. And then there's the QC concepts of QC modules in a way. So when we're talking about, I mentioned about seafood earlier on, but any manufacturing, most manufacturing process would involve quality control. So you have the ability to track stock by statuses. So the status can be A for approved, Q for quality controlled, and R for rejected. And then you're able to throw the software, configure certain categories or even items, or force certain items or categories to go through a quality control test. You can build your own QC sheet, questions and response, and based on the results, you can dictate, or you can set what the status would be. So for instance, if it doesn't meet the requirements, then it would go to let's say a rejected status, and then you can limit the movements of those stocks, for instance, based on a status. So you wouldn't necessarily want to sell a rejected stock status to a customer. So,
sorry to cut you off. We are about
yes.
time, so I'll let you just finish your thought, and then we'll need to wrap up.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah. So with this, this concludes the first session. Again, this is, I know that this is a lot, but just to give you a feel of the navigations, definitely encourage you to stick for the to connect to our next session. Next session will focus on distribution, and the following one will be on manufacturing, and then we'll go from there. So I thank you everyone for attending this session, and if you have any questions, by all means, if you want, I'm not sure if honestly I wasn't following the chat, but if you do have questions later on, we will be gathering the inventory, the list of questions, and providing you with the right answer following the sessions.